When this first landed on my desk, I assumed it was just another gimmick, some over-designed space-themed tat destined for Comic-Con merch tables. I was ready to present it as little more than novelty fluff, but something in the back of my mind, call it curiosity, call it a Vulcan mind probe, pushed me to dig into the backstory. And I'm glad I did. Because unlike most so-called space watches, this one has substance behind the spectacle. Space-inspired watches, some earn the title, others just slap a NASA logo on the dial and call it a day. The heavyweight champion, of course, is the Omega Moonwatch, the only watch NASA trusted enough to be strapped to astronauts as they wandered about on the lunar surface. Then there's the Bull of a Lunar Pilot, which famously hitched a ride on astronaut David Scott's wrist in 1971 after his issued Omega gave up mid-mission. One small malfunction for man, one giant leap for Bullover's marketing team. And before either of them, there was the Sturmansky, worn by Yuri Gagarin in 1961 when he became the first human and the first watch wearer to escape Earth's gravity. Less glamorous perhaps, but historically unmatched. A cosmonaut, a cramped casual, and a humble Soviet wristwatch looking down on all of us for the first time. Fast forward, and we've had more NASA collaborations than Star Trek spin-offs, most of them little more than limited edition cash grabs. But Fiyta has something others can't claim. This isn't cosplay, this is industry. Fiyta is part of the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, the very people who design and build rockets for China's space program. Since 2003, Fiyta has been the official supplier of watches to Chinese astronauts, including timepieces worn during China's first spacewalk in 2008. Not bad for a brand that began nearly 40 years ago and has quietly grown into one of the best-selling names in China. Now they're stretching their orbit, pushing into the international market, even showing at Baselworld right up until the show was permanently grounded in 2021. So no, this Fiyta hasn't technically been to space, but it's built by people who send things there for a living, which, in the grand scheme of space watches, feels like a slightly more credible qualification than painting the dial blue and hoping nobody notices. So, cool backstory, but what's the bloody thing like? First, the specs. The case is crafted from fully polished 316L stainless steel, coming in at 45mm across. The lugs neatly tuck under the case, giving it a tighter stance on the wrist than the headline spec suggests. Lug width is 20mm, and the overall height measures 14.5mm, including the crystal. Speaking of which, the crystal is no shy affair. A massive domed sapphire up front, paired with sapphire display case back so you can admire what's beating inside. And that's a modified Miyota 8215 upgraded with hacking, though, being perfectly honest, in this context, it's more a technical footnote than a practical advantage. And as for water resistance, just a modest 30 metres. But if this watch takes your fancy, it's currently available on the Fiyta website for $299. The link is in the description, so please go check it out. And use the coupon code FULLY10 for a 10% discount. Oh, and once this review is done with, this one will be packed up and added to the pile of the channel member giveaway watches, so keep watching to find out how to get involved. The case is a study in understated audacity. Fully polished, perfectly round, with lugs so tiny they almost disappear. It has a side profile that resembles an aerodynamic flying saucer, with its landing gears deployed, ready to launch at a moment's notice. The case curves inward beneath the lugs, avoiding any slab-sided industrial heaviness. The design exudes quiet confidence. No fuss, no over-the-top bezels, just a precise, considered shape that hints that the designer aimed for something outrageous, but wanted it to feel balanced on the wrist. Then there's the crown at 2 o'clock. At first, it looks oddly angled, almost comical, but it's genuinely clever. So much so that you wonder why more watches don't do this. It won't jab into your wrist like a 3 o'clock crown, and manipulating it on the wrist is unusually ergonomic, allowing the right hand to rest while winding. Not that you'll ever need to do that. The crown is slightly bulbous, knurled deep inside to feel tactile, and signed with Fiyta's F. Flip the watch over and the push-fit caseback is slightly off-centre, likely to accommodate the modified Miyota movement. OCD types might twitch, but it signals a prioritisation of functionality over symmetry, and a subtle shrug to perfectionism. Finishing is deceptively simple. No brushing, no half-hearted detailing. The polish is consistent and meticulous, running seamlessly across every surface and into the lug spaces that usually get ignored. The underside swoops in subtly, breaking the monotony of a flat back while remaining entirely unassuming. Sure, a fully polished circular case with minimal detailing isn't going to win any design awards, and there's only so much to say about it. But what's here is competent, feels solidly made, and carries a sense of originality. And yet, if you're paying attention, it's clear this watch isn't about the case. So the dial. Oh yes, the dial. Now, cards on the table. I've never really watched Star Trek or Star Wars. My knowledge comes entirely second-hand, absorbed from sitting between a hardcore Trekkie and an equally obsessed Star Wars fan at work. I've learnt just enough lingo to fake expertise at parties, though no party has ever required me to explain the finer points of a warp drive, and part of me will question if I was at the right party if they did. Still, even through my pop culture osmosis, I can tell you this. The essence of this dial feels like a cheeky nod to the Starfleet Delta. The centrepiece is a space shuttle, rendered in gunmetal grey, bead blasted so finely it could pass for plastic if you weren't paying attention. But it is metal, I think. And it is crisp, and in 3 dimensions no less, giving the dial a sense of depth that most space-themed gimmick watches can only dream of. Anchoring it all are 3 tiny screws on each wing, with a small reflective marker at 6 o'clock, little glimmers of detail that stop the whole thing becoming just a lump of shuttle-shaped novelty. Timekeeping is split between 2 systems. At the centre you get a fairly conventional set of hands, tiny strips of polished metal half hidden in the belly of the shuttle. They're not exactly the boldest, and at a glance you might miss them, but they sit inside a recessed concave minute track in black that frames them nicely against the grey. Then, down on the lower third, a rotating 3D hour wheel swoops beneath the shuttle, almost like a planet passing behind a spacecraft. Functionally, it's harder to read than a normal watch, but that's hardly the point. This is more Starship control panel than a kitchen clock. And that's the thing. This dial is less about legibility and more about theatre. It's not designed for someone who just wants to check if it's 2:30. It's designed to make a statement, to provoke a double take, to look like nothing else on the market, and on that front, it succeeds. When I first strapped it on, I thought the dial might be a deal breaker. Too fussy, too science fiction. But after a few days of living with it, it grew on me. Not because it suddenly became easier to read, it didn't, but because I realised it was doing its own thing and refusing to conform to the normal. It doesn't look like anything else. It's bold, it's weird, it knows it, and it embraces it. There are other versions available too, a stark black and a rather lovely blue and white model. Bizarrely though, that one comes with a mineral crystal instead of sapphire, which is like booking first-class tickets to Mars only to find out the shuttle is running on AA batteries. Let's hit pause on the review because it's giveaway time. I'm giving away this stunning Welly Merck WM226 when the channel hits 7,500 subscribers. To find out how to enter, click the link in the description. If you want even more chances to snag watches, I run a members-only giveaway where I give away all the review pieces I get sent, as well as offer early access to videos, exclusive content, and a good old chinwag in the members' posts. Fancy a shot at multiple watches every month? Just tap that join button below or hit the link in the description. The money from the members goes directly to the costs involved in getting these watches to the winners. The next giveaway in the pile is for the Pagani Design PD1707, and the winner will be announced on Friday the 5th of September, so join now for a chance to grab this and many other watches. Alright, shameless self-promotion over, let's get back to the video. Inside you'll find a modified Miyota 8215, a movement that spent most of its life playing second fiddle to the Seiko NH35, mainly because it couldn't hack or handwind, and watch nerds never really forgave it. Recently though, Miyota have given it a quiet glow up, and now it stands toe to toe with the Seiko. In fact, it's arguably the prettier of the two. The NH35 looks like a basic industrial fridge, while the 8215 has a touch more refinement about it. For affordable brands that like to show off the movement through an exhibition case pack, that matters. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see the Miyota making a proper comeback once everyone stops sulking about its past flaws. Although, they still need to do something about that bloody rotor noise. In this watch though, hacking is irrelevant, because there isn't a second's hand to freeze. The ghost date position, however, is less charming. Because the 8215 is fundamentally a date movement, you still get that useless middle click in the crown, which feels as frustrating as flicking the bathroom light switch on whilst you're bursting for some nighttime relief, but then remember you didn't change the bulbs, even though your missus has been nagging you to do it for a week. Still, what Fiyta have done here is the interesting part. They've taken a workhorse movement and dressed it up to play a very different role, using it to drive their whole shuttle and wheel concept of telling time. And whether or not the result works for you is a matter of taste, but you can't deny that they've taken a thoroughly ordinary engine and made it do something genuinely unusual. On the wrist, it's surprisingly well mannered for a watch with such a vast dial, and it wears incredibly well on my 6¼ inch noodle of an excuse I call a forearm. It sits flat, behaves itself, and is genuinely comfortable. The black silicone strap helps, a simple, slim bit of kit that feels better than I expected a cheap Chinese strap would be. I've worn it for a few days to get the measure of it, and more often than not, I forget it's even there, which is about as big a compliment you can give something this size. Now, let's be clear, this isn't going to redefine watch design, nor is it trying to. The finishing is competent, the proportions make sense, and the design manages to be genuinely interesting without ever tipping into costume jewellery theatrics. It's not my usual type of watch, and yet I've actually enjoyed it. And more than once I caught myself glancing down at the dial and grinning, which, frankly, nowadays, is all a watch really needs to achieve. If you fancy taking a closer look, I've left a link to it on the Fiyta website in the description. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.